So we're going to move on to a newer concept, which is starting to think in how this can be approached in a more modular way. So I'm going to introduce you to bases, containers, and toxes. So make sure you've saved this. And we're going to create a new project folder. Okay, and I'm just going to name this O1 Simple Modular. So we're going to delete a bunch of stuff. We may recreate it, so don't get angry at me. But let's just keep our banana, our null, and our out. And instead of the movie file in as a banana, even though we all love it, let's try something like count. Or actually jelly beans. Doesn't matter. Pick whatever thing you want, but why I changed it is, if I actually undo that, the banana has we can see this checkered background, it has an alpha, and pick something with a solid background. And the reason is, we're gonna make a very simple vignette module. And we can make a lot crazier things in TouchDesigner, but vignettes are very common. And it's very likely that it's something that, regardless of the project, we might reuse. So I have my movie file in, and I'm gonna right click on this network cable, and I'm gonna make a circle top. And we can see that it's a circle on top of our jelly beans. If I go to the second tab in the parameter and it says composite and set resolution, this is great because first off, it sets, if I middle click, I could see that the resolution of the circle is set to whatever the input in is. If I disconnect it, it goes to the default 256 by 256. But in this case, it's setting it and the aspect ratio to my input. So that's the first awesome stuff. But the blending operation is over. So we actually, similar to a composite top, we can choose different blending modes. And in this case, let's pick multiply. And we can see that already with very little effort, we have a vignette. And maybe we want to change the shape and size. Great. Next thing I do is right now it's setting it the background of the blend alpha. It's optional, but I'm just going to turn up the background alpha of, so we have the background color. Just going to turn up the alpha so that it's black, but that's again, totally optional, up to you and how you want to do it. And maybe, just maybe, I don't want to have just a simple circle. Maybe I want to have the option in the future to go between a rectangular type of vignette or a circle. So we're getting a bit complex. We're going to branch out our network. And I think you'll see where we're going with this hopefully soon. So I'm going to make a rectangle and similar deal. I'm going to plug it in and I'm going to go to output and we're going to change it to multiply. Okay. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to insert a switch top. And we could blend between inputs if you wanted, up to you. I'm going to keep it on because we can imagine these more like states. And what I'll do is I'm going to set my rectangle. I'm going to give it some softness, maybe make it a bit wider. I'm just playing with some numbers here. So maybe I want this sort of thing. Again, I'm doing this and quarter radius. Okay. And we could even extend this where the movie file could even just have a no vignette effect. So I'll go into my switch. I thought about this that a bit late, so I'm just going to put the movie file in to be the first channel. Awesome. So we have no vignette, circle vignette, and rectangle vignette. Okay, and I'm just going to also make that black too. Great. And looking at this, I'm going to make one minor modification, which is that we can see this movie file in is going to these three roots. I'm going to insert, I'm not insulting nulls, a null into our network. And I'm just going to connect these all to a null in case we want to make any changes to this operator, or maybe we want to add another switch and switch between inputs, this sort of thing. So this really just cleans everything up. So the first comp I want to introduce you to are called bases. And bases allow us to contain our data, but one really important thing to note about bases in TouchDesigner is bases are often used to contain and allow for, if we just want scripts, which we'll later get into, Python. It allows us to organize our networks. And sometimes when I find people are beginning, they don't know the difference between bases and containers and when to use them. And essentially containers allow very similar, but they generally also allow you to design a higher interactive display. And I'll show some examples of these. I just want to give you a bit of a primer there. Technically, what we could do is, if we knew we wanted this all in a base in the first place, I could have right-clicked, click base, right? And I would have made one. Okay, so that's an option. We could select all this, copy and put it into a base, or we can select it all, right-click, hit, and make sure you're right-clicking on the network, not an operator, and hit collapse selected. And that automatically makes a base. So this is very nice because we can condense all of our code and think about this as a chunk of our network that it's tidy, and we're going to actually look at ways of reusing this as well. Okay, so if I zoom in, we can see that all my operators are still here, and we can see even in my network that says project/base, so we know where we are. And I'm going to zoom out here, and what I like to do is if I have something like the base, I like to name it, and I'm just going to name this Vignette. Okay, and if I click viewer, we could actually see the result of our image. I'm going to change the switch to maybe 1 to our circle. And remember, this could be any combination of operators. This could be chops inside, this could be tops, this could be sops, this could be dats, doesn't matter, right? This is just to contain part of our network.